And we are live. What's up, bro?
Hey, oh, I was about to go.
Go. We live, man. We
You alive?
live.
Hey,
We
everybody, what's up? How you
live.
doing? It's your man, J. Kev, Lafe Taylor here, just having our frequently weekly conversation. Hopefully, just adding value, hopefully entertaining, and hopefully, just some way, shape, or form, giving you something to think about, something just to kind of consider as you go along your way. Of course, our four pillars: health, wealth, relationships, and happiness. We always talk
Absolutely.
about topics and subjects from that frame. So what's up? What's been up with you, Leif? I know before we got on, we were talking about the changes that we've seen thus far since worldwide global pandemic, known as the coronavirus or whatever has ensued. And I sent you a clip over earlier of a little snippet with a guy by the name of Bruce Lipton, I believe, who's a doctor, trained medical physician who has been one of the ones at the tip of the spear talking about epigenetics and the science of how environment shapes the expression of our DNA. Just
How,
talking
how,
about
how long is that clip?
the clip in and of itself is, I think, like around 10 minutes, but you can watch the original show on a YouTube channel called London Real. London Real. And he did an interview like yesterday. Um, yeah, Lafe's got that in-house quarantine beard going now. He's been
No,
leveled
actually,
up.
it was funny. It was what's up, everybody. I actually shaved. I just shaved everything but my goatee. That's what's funny.
I've been
What's
in
up,
so long that my dreads is now, kind of growing a little bit. So,
man?
but yeah, just talking about, the power of belief in the show on the longer snippet of the show was on London Real. And he did an interview. I forgot the guy's name he did an interview with, but if you just type in his name, Bruce Lipton, you'll see all kinds of his interviews and
Okay, I,
lectures
I
and
was
stuff that he
just
talks
trying
about.
to see how long it was. If it was like just a minute or two, I was gonna just play it on here. That's all.
Okay. Well, you can't. Well, that snippet I sent you was like 10 minutes, but the show is like an hour and 40, hour and 30 minutes long. But just talking about that particular show is talking about the power of belief and how important it is that we cultivate um, our beliefs and our thoughts, and that when you do that, um, a set of beliefs and thoughts are packaged into a mindset, and then when you package something into a mindset, that shapes our human behavior, and it also shapes how we feel, and that can create a loop where you go from belief, action, feeling, all the way back around. So it's important that we think about what we believe and why we believe it, and you know where our beliefs are sourced from. So just thinking about that. And, before we got on, we were talking about how um, just
What's
the
up, Chris?
simple, just how belief, somebody's belief about what's happening now is shaping worldwide cultural and societal behavior. And I was just expressing to you like some of the things I've noticed, given that I've spent most of my working, life out in the public, so I can see it with crystal clearness on how within a short span of time, because of what somebody believes and how they believes, how it's done shifted our behaviors. And I
Yep.
think I seen a post from you, a while back, talking about belief and
Yep.
why it is that you believe what you believe. So I guess that's kind of
Yeah,
taking my
because it was
subconscious.
around like so just to give some insight. So the reason why I posted that was it's funny, like when you have varied kinds of friends on your timeline, you see all kinds of posts. And the thing that I was like, on one hand you got people, like, all right, stay home, stay safe, blah blah blah. And on the other hand, you have people that believe that it's all made up. And it's like,
And then you
where are
have a
you
and then you
where
have
are
a
you
range in
getting?
between.
Yeah, and so it's just like a gamut there, and it's like, okay, why is it that you believe what you believe in particular? What is it that makes you believe one source over another? And it's the same. I was asking myself that same question, so it wasn't just like I'm putting it on everybody else,
Right.
just ask like, okay, so why is it that give more credibility to one news source versus another? And so I was trying to pose that to see, what people thought about that, and if they've ever thought about it at all. Some
Okay.
people like they gave honest, what I thought were honest, answers like, I don't know. I just vet, and then because, as because you studied this stuff in school, that's what you went to school for. And even for myself, anything can be manipulated, especially when you're not there. And even when you are there, there's stuff you won't see anyway. so
Yep.
so information can always be manipulated. And then so that leads you to be like, okay, so why do I trust this person, and what is the track record, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, somebody who helped me with belief and why it's always one of those constant habits that one has to cultivate over the course of their lifetime until
Yep.
death was John Gatto.
Okay.
He was like New York City's teacher of the year like twice, and he was a guy that he wrote the book um, Dumbing Down of America,
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah. I
talking about
remember that. Yep.
yeah, just yeah, there's a 5 hour interview that he did with channel Tragedy and Hope, and in that course of that interview, he talks about one of the things he had to come to terms with when it came to like uncovering and finding out some of the things that he found out as a teacher, and like just doing some research, was that he had to come to terms with constantly make it a high priority to do research and constantly question his own beliefs.
Yep.
So, that goes back, in the importance of questioning your beliefs in your sources, where you're getting thoughts and ideas from, what's the root of those ideas, and why do we have them. So he was one of the I guess somebody that kind of sticks out in my mind when it comes to the importance of thinking about what we believe, why we believe it, and how we come to the beliefs that we have. We're born in this world, and we are trained, indoctrinated, socialized, and
Yep.
cultured in a fashion, in a way, and each and every one of us, when it comes to maturity, has to come to terms with questioning and then cultivating our own beliefs um, uh, you know, at our own standards, with some overarching or underlying core uh, philosophical principles. Does that, does
Yep.
that, does that make sense?
Yeah. And
So,
also,
so
go ahead.
go ahead.
No, finish.
Well, for me, at the core of my philosophical principles, my beliefs is comes from a Christian perspective, and I've had to come to terms with even questioning that and kind of just going over all the things that I was socialized with. So
Yep.
I'm not saying anything on here that I haven't already put in the work to
Yep.
do, as far as like questioning some of the beliefs and why we have them and things like that. Go ahead.
Yeah, and also one of the things I was just going to interject, and not only with all of those things, you also have just your baked in personality that feeds
Yes.
into that as well. So
Yeah.
that's part of all the equation in terms of why you believe. Because I always think about my children, then I think about myself, and they're very different personalities. They're twins, but they have very different personalities, and the way they think and believe vary between them. Of course, they
Yep.
have a lot of similarities, but based on their personalities, they take things in completely different ways.
That
And
yeah.
so,
That
go ahead.
That's a very good point. And it's interesting that you can kind of do like in-house experiments and that you have twins,
Yeah.
and like just because they're twins and genetically are the same, just because they still have differences in personality, which skews or affects the
Yep.
perception of of core reality. There's a core reality, a thread that's unshakable, unmovable, but each and every one of us are finite, and our perception and our perspectives are limited with the range of variability. So we're all going to have skewed views of core reality. But the challenge is, you know, ego checking
Yes.
and just being humble enough to say, you know what, I'm a human being, I'm finite, I don't know everything, and I'm more than likely possibly wrong on a lot of stuff. There might be like,
Yeah.
it might be, but maybe 1% I'm right on, but more than likely, I'm probably off here and there a lot. So just being humble enough to realize that, and just being able to work through that and ego check self, so that you can um, be open, have some core, unmovable, unshakable beliefs that you've cultivated over the course of
Yep.
your life, but also be flexible, open enough to be able to change positions or pivot when necessary.
Yeah, and also even just being transparent enough with yourself, not even anybody else, but transparent enough with yourself in terms of why you have changed, right? Because everybody over time, that's one thing that's an immutable fact is that you will change. And so you have to see why you're changing, why you've cultivated the mindset that you've cultivated, what things lend to that, what experiences, for example, right? I have again twins. I have one kid that loves animals. I have another kid that's deathly afraid of them, right? And then it's like, so we were trying to get to the root of why are you so afraid of animals and, so on and so forth. And then she was like, well, when I was a baby, I remember this dog snipping at my hand and I didn't like it. Right. And so when you think about things like that, that's imprinted in her brain and it's hard for her to overcome because it's such a strong imprint that, that's manipulated her core beliefs. Right. And so the same thing can be said for us. What trauma, what events, it doesn't have to necessarily be trauma. It might be a good thing. When I was growing up, my grandfather used to take me to the ice cream store. And, so now I love ice cream. I've been loving ice cream all my life. And, so doesn't have to be a trauma type, decision, but there's certain things in our lives that imprint on us in a certain way, and it affects the way we have an outlook on the world. To all is yellow to the jaundiced eye kind of thing. And
Mm,
so you just have to just be aware of, okay, why do I like this, why is this so important to me? And I had to go through this for myself in terms of I used to latch on to material things in terms of if somebody gave it to me or something like
yep.
that. But then I was like, when I think about it, somebody else has the same thing just because this person, and so you just have to start really going through your own psychology.
Yeah, it's the emotional attachment that's really at the core of why, a lot of our beliefs, going back to beliefs, actions, and then also belief actions feelings, or belief feelings then action. Just talking about the importance of feelings and emotions and how powerful it is, because that's what really moves us on with respect to our beliefs. And then when I was saying that, I was thinking about Dr. David Lustig in the four C's of contentment. And if you go to his website, he's got an infographic with the four C's of contentment: connect, collaborate, cope, and cook. And then he talks about, there's another page where he talks about, he looks at some examples of how corporations use our emotions through pictures and media to help transfer some of our emotions over to their product so we can have an attachment there. What did Eric Collar say?
So Eric was talking about he talked to a friend of his. I guess they are twin and see how much they had in common, and she said none. He said each individual soul has their own thoughts and choices,
Yeah.
and she thought that they would have similarities like his wife and her twin. And that's funny. Twins are interesting thing. Just a quick side note, because I never thought about it until I had twins, but I had roommates that were twins, and I had two roommates at the same time that were twins, and I never even thought about it. It didn't even cross my mind. I was oblivious to the whole mindset, and I knew some other friends that have twins. I know quite a few twins, as a matter of fact, but some of them I never knew that they actually had a twin because they were so different. They never even talked about the fact that they had one. And so it's definitely interesting how, it's like Eric was saying, everybody's different. There's certain makeups, and I don't know why that is. Why you can grow up in the same household and be completely different than the people that are in your household. For example, you and your sister, you and
Yep.
your sister have completely different personalities. You would think y'all were years apart in age, and so it's just it's fascinating, right? Not to say
Yeah.
it's weird, just very fascinating how you can grow up at the same time and the same era, the same household, even like you said, have the same genetic but to have completely different dispositions. And so that's definitely fascinating. And those things, like you said, affect how we believe and what we believe and why we believe. Yeah, genetic, all of that, man. It's genetics, it's environment, and as we had talked about before, people are the environment most of the time. When we typically think about environment, we think about like the land, the towers, the 5G towers that everybody's trying to tear down now. Uh,
What well you wanna touch on some of that
Well, what I'm saying is, but that's what we typically think about when we think about
environment?
environment.
Yes,
But
yes.
really, it's the people that cultivate that environment. The environment is kind of almost secondary in terms of that, because it's the people around us that cultivate and mold us more so than the environment itself.
Well, there's different layers. You touched on one layer. Actually, touched on two, talking about the environment, and then you talked about people in groups.
Yep.
And that's a good point. Bruce Lipton in the video talks about people, an individual as an environment, in that what we see that we're made up of is actually an environment of trillions of different bacteria, and
All right.
it's like at one level we're not even solid. Like
Yeah.
thinking of
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm thinking about Marvel and Ant-Man when he goes down so small that he actually goes through the atoms or whatever. He goes quantum level. So it's that type of stuff that Bruce Lipton talks about, smashing together epigenetics and biology with quantum physics, and just talk why, which goes back to why it's important, considering what we believe and why we believe it, and that your beliefs affect your inner environment. And
Yep.
in saying that, he talked about how our beliefs affect the chemical makeup when it comes to hormones and secretion,
Yep.
which affects, it triggers a bunch of change reactions that affects us outwardly, as far as if you're dealing with illness or symptoms or whatever. A lot of things can be traced back to how you're thinking and what you're thinking. He was just talking about the importance of being careful of not letting the fear and panic
Yep.
override your calm, serenity, your peace. Always try to do what you can to maintain that in today's environment, in today's world, and that ideas can go viral too.
Yeah.
And
Literally.
literally, and a great
Literal
example
viral.
of that is the TP idea, and that talking about how that idea was implanted somewhere. Talking about when in times of crisis,
Yeah.
go for the TP. Somebody
or
somewhere
or
planted that
even milk,
idea.
milk and bread, right?
Milk and bread. Yeah, it never fails. So somebody somewhere planted that idea, and it's gone viral, and it continues to do so. It's like something that's etched in our hive mind. When people come together, they form
Yep.
a what they call a hive mind. So uh, yes, hive mind. Speaking to, there are some people who are proficient at speaking to the hive mind. Thinking about Hitler, and I'm thinking
Yes.
about Obama was very efficient and very good at that too, as far as speaking to the collective mind and having people move and act and under influence. That's what influencers do.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
Literally.
yeah, influence the movement of people. That's why celebrities are important, and why the management of celebrities are important, because with that one celebrity, you can move a crowd of people. Um, and when I was saying that, I was thinking about oh man, a documentary I just watched. I think I sent it to you. Shadows, Out of the Shadows. I just watched
Okay,
it. It
I'll
came
have to
out
check it out.
this year, and when I was talking of just previously talking about celebrities and stuff, um, that was something that was on the back of my mind. Man, I forgot where I was going.
Yeah, well, real quick, while you're thinking about that, when you was talking about going down to the cellular level,
Yeah,
how we're not even really solid in terms of that. My wife has this microscope that she bought for the kids, where you can connect it to the television and you can run it over your skin, and you can see all the gaps and the holes and all of that stuff. Even it gets down like to where you can see the details in a hair follicle, right?
wow.
And so looking at those kinds of things, it's like, wow, you have all of, like you said, the trillions of bacteria, the germs, all of this stuff is everywhere. Let's see, Stephen said Trump is good at it too, unfortunately, in all the wrong ways. Yeah, I was literally thinking about him when you were talking about that. People, I
Oh,
mean,
he's a master.
anybody that's at the presidential level has done
Is a
it and is
master.
doing it. And my wife and I had this conversation. We were talking about manipulation, belief systems, and really going into something you said. I can't remember the specific of when you just said it, but we talk about it all the time in the form of media, and the power of constantly bombarding an idea into somebody, and that creates a hive mind in and of itself. It either repels you or it compels you, right? And
Yep.
so and those can be very effective in different times. And so you again just got to be hyper aware of the information that's going on. For example, social distancing, right? This was not a term until within the past month or two,
Yeah.
and now you see it everywhere. You see the fake news commentary, right? Saying that something is fake news. That wasn't part of the vernacular
Yeah.
until they start pushing it during the election times, right? And so when you start thinking about these catchphrases and all of these different things, the new slang terms that are coming directly from the media as opposed from the people to the media, this coming directly from the media to dictate how we think and how we react and how we respond. And it's fascinating and scary at the same time.
It's yeah, it's definitely fascinating and scary because yeah, you're right, and that the level of effectiveness of the tools that are at um, the hands of people in influential positions, it's crazy, crazy level. Thinking about the what was that documentary we talked about where they were scraping the information from social media, Facebook and stuff. You remember
You're talking
what
about
the
the
what
one that talked about uh, Cambridge Analytica.
Yes.
Okay, that one. Yeah,
Yeah, just thinking about that and how the tools that are available
yeah.
can really be
They
effective.
created wars, like literally.
Yes.
They instigated wars and protests and all that kind of stuff. He said, "What do you guys feel about the young millennials?" I don't know if that's a group or you talking about people. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
I feel
I I don't buy into it myself personally. When we talk about like the millennials and these different groups, I don't buy into it because they try to make them seem like they're a different organism, and I'm like, they're not too different if you're raising them. If you're the ones raising it just doesn't make sense. Anyway, it's just my
well,
take on it. Go ahead.
well, the world and the environment that they're coming up in is the landscape has changed. So
Okay.
they are younger generations.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Gotcha.
younger
Yep.
generations are totally different always different than the previous generations in that they're coming up in a totally new
The environments are
new
different.
yes. So that dictates um how different they're going to be. For example, you know, Gary Vee always talks about when being an entrepreneur wasn't in. And the end thing was to, go to college, get good grades, save your
Yeah.
money, get the house, the picket fence, live the American dream. And now that's kind of gone to the wayside with a lot of millennials, given the environment that we're in. Looking at the state of affairs, I was thinking about my sons, you
Hmm.
know, and just on regularly we have I conversate with them about the things that they're experiencing now. I never experienced a shutdown like this before, you
Oh,
know.
none of us
Well,
have.
yeah, none of them have, but now the seed for them has been planted to where if this happens again, it's like a regular type of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, he said our generation did that too. Again, for me, I don't see stuff as being different. I just see that the environment in which that stuff is navigated is a lot different.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, for example, you talk about your kids, and I even look at my own kids, and I'm like, I control the environment, so nothing much is really different outside of the fact that information is more of a steady flow than it was when I was a kid. The things that are around that are available, but I don't think that makes them inherently different themselves.
Okay.
I work with kids, and I'm like, okay, I know all the bad stuff I did when I was a kid, so and pretty much I see kids, not even necessarily bad. It's just kids are just mischievous and all of that kind of stuff. He said all in the upbringing. Yeah. And so I don't really see much different myself when I look, because again, I always take a step back. When people point and I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I was an anomaly. I don't know, because
Mhm.
I don't see any different than what kids are doing now. Kids are always gonna do something stupid, regardless. They're just part of their makeup. I look at myself and all the stupid things I did, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's just part of development. It's part of trying to figure the world out. It's part of ignoring everybody, all the information that presents itself. I was that person, so it's like I don't see much different. So that's just my take on it. You put somebody that was born in the 1940s. If you take that same person, place them here, they will grow up the same way with the same kind of environmental influences. So I don't think there's much different, to be honest. That's just my take on
Mm, okay.
it. He's, he said, I made the mistake of downloading TikTok. I think there is.
There's a difference, man. I look at TikTok, I'm like, what?
It's just stuff that's available. I don't, like, again, it's different because we're old. And just think about it. It's like, just think of the things that when you were growing up, certain things your parents were unaware of, because guess what? They spend all their time working. They're not influenced by a lot of the stuff that's going on in the
but
culture.
but again, but it's a different world, a different environment, which is going to affect each. Like the example of the person from 1940. If you play a person out of prison who goes in at a certain time and they come out, this is a whole brave new world to them.
No,
Given
because things have changed. So for example, he said, "Do you hear kids nowadays saying yes, ma'am, or no, sir?" I do in my house. and,
yeah, but
and
society
no,
societal,
but yeah, because again, society, because even in our classroom, right? So I, just to give some premise,
content.
because I know Dr. Oliver does the same thing. Uh, he works with students and that kind of stuff. So we had classroom. We worked with 80 kids from the ages of, see, 8 to 10. I think it's 8 to 10 is the age range, right? And in our class, when you talk to us, it was yes sir, no sir. You go to the military, guess what it's going to be?
No.
Yes sir. So again, environment dictates that.
Yes.
And all I'm saying is that genetically they're no different.
Right.
Genetically they're no different. Outside of environmental factors,
And
and
that's
all the
and
stuff
that
that.
we're saying the same thing. Then we're
Yeah, yeah,
saying the
yeah.
same thing.
Okay.
Okay.
So, so yeah. So anyway, even going back to your earlier point about some of the stuff that influences us and those kinds of things. Uh, Speaking of environmental changes, I think about my kids, right? So I grew up watching the Cosby Show, and my kids
Yep.
watch the Cosby Show. The difference is they've watched all of the Cosby Show multiple times. So they know way more about the show than I do, because when I was growing up, it
These-
only came on once a week, and
Yep.
if you missed it, you missed it. And wait for syndication. By the time syndication came around, I was no longer into it, so I ain't watching. So they know a lot more about the stuff that I watched when I was growing up, because again, we dictate what they can and cannot watch in our house. And so some of the things that they've seen, even, they'll like, what did you watch when you was growing up? And so they'll look at it and they'll know more about it than I do, because they have a technology available,
Yeah.
certain technologies that are available. So from that perspective, in terms of influence, this is something for parents to think about, and even for yourself. The fact that the cycle does not stop means that in terms of the news, in terms of information, you have to set aside your own time to really think about and parse through the information that you're taking in. And
Okay.
so that's something that's extremely important. And one of the things that I talk about in our household, that we talk about, is, are you being a consumer or are you being a producer? Are you creating anything, or are you just simply taking things in? And so you have to be careful that if you're constantly taking things in, do you have enough time to process it? Do you have enough time to really go through that information? Do you have enough time to see whether or not this is information you should be taking in, and why this information is coming? Why is it directed towards you? How did you come across it? Are you aware that when ads pop up, that it's like, okay, why did they send me this ad? What, for example, my wife was watching, she was on YouTube, and she was like, "Why is this being suggested to me?" I have, it was something that, some video. She's like, "I don't look at any of these things that relate to this. Why are they pushing this to me?" And so she said, when the video came up, a lot of people were saying the exact same thing. Why is this? So you got to be aware of what's being pushed, right? Uh, you got to be thinking about the, decisions. Again, I always, if you have Netflix, check out the guy. His name is Darren. He's a mentalist. I bring this up every now and then,
Mm-hmm.
and he has a show called The Push. And what it is, just for those that you don't know, I haven't talked about it since last year, I don't think. A push is something that, if you're playing cards with a magician, or they want you to pick a card, they've pushed the card onto you, meaning that you think you're making a choice on what card you're choosing, but in reality, they've chosen the card for you. So a lot of times when we look at media, when we look at information and news and all of these kinds of things, we think we're making an actual decision, but in reality, we're being pushed a decision. It's like, oh, for example, the presidential race. It's like, oh, okay, it's either Trump or Biden. No, it really isn't. Because
Wow.
according to the laws and the rules, we can vote anybody in that we want. They don't have to be a Democrat. They don't have to be a Republican. We can write anybody in that we want to. But the push is that this is the choice, right?
When you
And
said
so, go ahead.
you're making me think of the book Tragedy and Hope by Dr. Carl Quigley, who was the mentor to Bill Clinton, talking about, like you said, the push, giving um, a false sense of having power and having the ability to choose.
That's why the magician is always in control in their shows, right? And it's the same thing, because I had this discussion with my wife talking about the push, and like, it ain't just Bernie. It ain't just Biden. It ain't just Trump. We have roughly 200 million or 100 million. I don't know what the age split is in America, but we
Mm-hmm.
have roughly that many people to choose from. But again, based on what we see, because you can always write in a candidate, but we get so tied up in the constant push of information that we don't take the time out to really think about it, to really think that, okay, we have many choices. There's all kinds of choices in life, but whenever you're told to choose between one thing or another, then the choice has already been made for you.
Dang, when you said that, you were making me think of a quote by Edward Bernays in the book Propaganda, where he said the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Is it? Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. And then you go, well, who's Edward Bernays and why should I care about what he just said?
Oh man,
exactly. I mean, he's the reason why we eat bacon and eggs for breakfast. You know, he's the reason
Yeah.
why women started
What's
smoking.
funny, yeah, what's funny about that is that's how I came up. That's how I read the book about habits by Charles Duhigg. It was an article. I think I don't know if you sent it to me or it was an article. It was several years ago. It was before we even started doing this live stuff, and I don't even think Facebook Live was around. Anyway, I that was always my question: is why do we eat breakfast? Why is the American breakfast what it is? And then I saw an article talking about that very thing. This is why we eat, people eat bacon and eggs and sausage and all of this stuff for breakfast is because of Edward Bernays. And so that made me actually really start digging into marketing and all of those kinds of things to see why we do what we do. What motivates us to do what we do. And then you start realizing that it's the push, it's the manipulation, it's those things that affect us subconsciously, but that are overt if you really open your eyes and see it. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
And that's one of the things that Dr. David Lustig talks about in his book, The Hacking of the American Mind. And, I try to throw out as many quotes and books of,
Yeah,
going
yeah.
back to, I'm getting at what I'm getting, trying to get at is, cultivating a habit of finding out the individuals that actually come out of their arenas of expertise, and they actually put stuff in writing, which is documenting. Writing is a way of documenting. So, and trying to find quotes and documents that will
Sorry about that.
stand up and under scrutiny and under peer reviewed handling. So that's one way of cultivating a habit of trying to when it comes to trying to um, vet your knowledge base, and
Yep.
then cultivate some understanding so you can have some practices or some actions that actually help you move forward in peace, prosperity, and power in your life. So that's why you oftentimes throughout the shows you hear me give out books and quotes and maybe even link to like interviews of the actual person actually saying it, because that was one of my big issues, first coming online and following down the YouTube rabbit trails of all this, that, and the other.
Yep.
And so I'm like, well, who said that and where they say it? So I had to begin the journey of actually going out and, reading the books for myself. And if I can personally talk to somebody that's in a position that I want to question, then I go seek them out and get their opinion and
Yep.
view on things. Just, I was going to ask you, how do you vet your knowledge base? How do you vet your beliefs? So that's what I'm getting at is that either one, you may have to actually go actually physically interview or talk to people in their field of expertise. Two, look at documents that have underwent peer-reviewed scrutiny, documents that will hold up maybe in a court of law that is, under legal scrutiny that would stand up. And, just having a core ethical, philosophical base that is ethical and moral, these, and that is in line with natural law. And I'm using natural law just to get uh, at people or individuals who don't necessarily buy into any religious view or way of thinking. So there is a natural law that is innate in in this world that we live in. If you go against it, you get punished. If you go against it, you don't prosper. If you go against it, you get a lot of headaches. If you go with it, then that's when you prosper, grow. You have peace in your life. You're not in a body of dis-ease. You're not in a emotional state of fear or frustration or franticness. You have clear, logical, rational thought that is based on something that is solid and unmovable. And then, so just thinking about, that.
Yeah, and also just to add to that is follow the money. Even with peer reviewed information, you got to follow the money. And,
Yes.
and
Who
this stuff
funded it?
doesn't happen overnight. So don't think
Right.
we're saying that you got to do 30 pages of research for every thought and opinion that you ever hear.
No.
But just like be open to like, okay, if this person says something, then there's chances that they may be wrong or that they may be lying or that they may be manipulating me. Uh, all pro- all media is propaganda. So keep that in mind. What we're doing right now, this is propaganda. We're trying to tell you, we're trying to convince you to think more in terms of why you believe what you believe, why you take in the information you take in, and a lot of times you may find that sometimes you only listen to certain information if it kind of gels with what you already think.
Yep.
So be willing to even read contrary things.
Yes.
One of the things that started to change my mindset in the way I looked at stuff, especially when it came to religion and things like that, I would always try to prove myself wrong. Uh, and then when I read whatever information I read, I would try to prove that wrong. And then so you just start, you start fighting against all information in a sense. And that's not to say that it's the perfect vet or the perfect way to do something at
Mm-mm.
all,
It's
but
a
at
lifelong
least,
journey.
yeah, at least that you vet all the information that you come in. You have some sort of filter, which is what Kevin was talking about. You have a
Yes.
filter of how you source your information, of why you source the information. You have a base and a groundwork of, okay, this is the premise that I'm coming from, and I'll weigh everything against this, right? And so definitely be mindful of that. Keep your eyes open. Uh, you know, Pay attention. That's one thing that the easiest thing that you can do is just pay attention. Pay attention to what's said and pay attention to what's done. One of the ways that one of the simple ways that I've vet a lot of information, especially when it comes to people telling you to do something, is are you doing it yourself? That's one of the things that I do. Whether when I look at these talking heads on television, especially now in time of a pandemic, in time of whatever it is you want to call this particular time period that we're in right now within the past several months.
Yeah.
If somebody's telling you to do something, see what they do. If I'm telling you that something is not dangerous, and I'll be like, yeah, it's not dangerous out there, but you see me putting on a bulletproof vest and strapping up, then don't believe what I'm telling you.
Yep.
don't believe anything I'm telling you because I'm lying. I know I've brought this up before. It's just like when we were starting a business years ago, we would talk to all of these guys that raise money, and they'd be like, "Yeah, you shouldn't raise money. You don't want investors in your company. You don't want this and that. You don't want to do this." But it's like, okay, so what are you doing right now? Where we're about to do our second round, and it's like, hold on. You're trying to tell me that we shouldn't raise money, but you're going out and raising money. So logically, I'm thinking that's what I need to be doing too. Because if that's what I need to keep a business going, then that's what I'm going to go do. Because obviously that's what you're doing, but that's not what you're telling me. And so just keep in mind that, pay attention to the hypocrisy. So that's another thing to do. Pay attention to the hypocrisy. If somebody's telling you to do something that they're not willing to do, then you need to question that. Question why they aren't willing to do it, or why they're telling you that is good for you and not for them. Always be mindful of that. And that's a simple way to vet information. I know our kids are like, okay, so if, we can't do it, then why is this? Then if they can't explain it, then you need to question that. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And again, in terms of following money, there's all types of people that'll change an opinion based on funding. And if somebody's funding is tied to an opinion, then you need to rethink that opinion.
If you gave
Because
me $1 million, I will not be tied to your opinion, Leif.
yeah, you're lying. So people don't work against their own self-interest, and keep that in mind as well when you're vetting information. In other words, so you can't expect me to tell the truth about I'll say a particular drug company if that drug company is paying all my bills. It's just not going to work. So you need to be careful of medical information. You need to be careful of political information, all kinds of stuff. What do you think? I think it's so stupid.
No, I'm just thinking about me when I used to work for a big box chain, and I was
Yeah.
I was I was a manager, or whatever, and supervisor. I used to people. But as soon as I left, I started just being real. But when I'm
Yeah.
there and they paying my bills,
Oh yeah. You're a company man.
that's when I
You
was
company
younger
all
though. That's
day.
when I was younger. That's when I was younger.
Exactly.
Didn't know. I was trying to go up the corporate ladder, you know.
And that's the thing, you a company man, so people do what the company says. And the thing is, I've had this conversation with people in the military before. It's very much along those lines as well, in terms of when you're part of the the structure, you fall in line with the structure. And this goes across the board with just about anybody in any profession. You fall with the structure, you fall with the mindset of that structure more than likely. And sometimes even if you know something is wrong, people fall in line. They just do. I forgot the name of the book. I'll post it in Two Shy Guys group. When I think about it, it was a book like why do smart people do extremely dumb things, and
Dumb
is
things. Um,
yeah, I can't remember. It's something along those lines, but it talks about like the greatest disasters in history, and the dumb decisions that led to it, and pretty much across the board, all it had to do was falling in line with structure. They fell in line with somebody's authority or somebody else, and they did stupid stuff that cost people their lives. So again, when getting back to when you're to vetting information, you just want to make sure that he said quarantine and drove me bald, bro. I was already there, man. I was already shaved. But again, when you're vetting information, just make sure that you just ask questions. Stay curious about your questioning. It's like, oh,
yeah,
why should we do this? And then that'll get you on your own path to look up stuff. It's like, okay, I read that it says to do this. Okay, but who is this source? Why are they writing about this? Then you
man.
start reading there. Go ahead.
Yeah. But when you're talking, you make me think when you talked about funding and organizations, that's what led me down the road of like really like listening and watching the live streams of a lot of non-governmental organizations.
Yep.
Um, but specifically, people like the World Economic Forum, the UN.
Yep.
There's a bunch of other ones
They've
too.
come up.
So,
They've come up recently.
huh?
I said the
World
World
Economic
Economic
Forum.
Forum. Yeah, they've come up, especially at the start of the whole COVID talks. Yeah,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
were mentioned
yeah.
very early on.
Yeah, because well, again, it's just going back to I guess we can kind of touch on the conspiracies. You talked about the two gamut, the range of spectrum as far as beliefs, and one of the things for me was that I got tired of kind of. I was always curious, is like how do you find out the true source? So that's when I like a couple of years back, I started like watching the live streams of these forums, and they're pretty open and kind
Yeah,
of blunt about things. They were in the beginning, but now I'm noticing that they kind of like a lot
yeah,
of times they'll say, "Remember, this is being recorded live stream."
yeah. Just
Shadow
the
House rules. Like, what's that mean? Am I
yeah.
not in the in group? What's up? So
No, you're not,
so just
Kevin. I just want to let you
yeah, I
know. You're
know. I'm not in it. But that's just this one way of like going straight to the horse's mouth and just watching, like you said, watching what they do, what's being done, and looking at some of the funding behind a lot of people in influential positions, and that's how you can determine or come to some kind of beliefs or thoughts or ideas about what's taking place in the present, what's
yeah.
happened in the past, and what may transpire in the future. As I'm thinking about the book with Annie Jacobson. I read all her books the last couple of years, talking about. I keep quoting her, but I forgot the book. She's talking about Operation Paperclip and all the
Okay.
other
Yeah,
books
yeah,
that
yeah,
she's
yeah, yeah.
written. The Pentagon's Brain, Annie Jacobson.
Yep.
So I'm just throwing
Uh,
out names and books and
and
history.
so another quick thing as well. Even when you talked about documentaries, you're talking about books. Just a quick tip on some of the things that I do. For example, so I'm really focused on a lot of animation stuff. Uh, you know, I do a lot of research in it. One of the things that you can do with any movie, any piece of propaganda, or anything that requires people to work on it is read the credits. Read the credits and look up the names. Look up those people that produce this information. Look up the sponsors. If you want to know where the money's coming from, look up the executive producers of any of these documentaries, any of these
Yes.
films. Those are the people that go gather the money. So you look into that, and then then potentially they'll let you know who they worked with. Okay, this studio worked, they worked with this particular studio. Who funds that studio? And
Man,
so that's one way to figure out how all of this stuff is connected. I remember, and it still might be online. There's a chart that shows everybody who's on everybody's board at the top 100. Uh, and so when you start seeing the connect there, you realize that, oh, all of these people are on the same team
same
because it's
board.
the same
Yeah.
people. It's the same people that may be on variety of boards. So again, it's following the money, seeing who's doing what, who's advising, who's putting in, who's funding. All of these things are readily available now because again, there's so much information out there that is just made public anyway.
It's
Because
a fire
chances of you
hose.
looking it up
Yeah.
are
You
very
ain't gonna
slim.
find it.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
don't care. It's like, yeah, I'll tell you that there's arsenic in this food. You'll eat it anyway because you're not going to read the instructions.
Because you love it.
Yeah,
I know it's arsenic in here, but it's
exactly. Make it taste good. Yeah, I was going to say something, but I didn't want to give any spoilers away. I don't know if anybody's seen The Hunters on Prime, but anyway, they talked about how they would pretty much cripple the world, and it was something very simple. And it's like, what? This can't be real. But when you think about it, a lot of stuff is attached to it, and it's the most simplest thing on earth. But again, it's just stuff like that just pay attention. That's all I can say. At the
was
very,
that a movie or documentary?
it's a TV show because so there's two different things. There's a movie that came out called The Hunters, and there's a TV or a series on Prime called The Hunters. And so they're two different things. I thought they were the same thing, but they're two different things. One of them is about, and they actually toss in real facts. It's about how the Nazis were brought to America by politicians.
That's
Uh,
Operation Paperclip.
yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. That's what made
Oh,
me think about it. So the whole Operation Paperclip is where they went and got all the scientists from Nazi Germany. They're like, oh, so we won't let Russia
Russia.
get them. We'll bring them here. And so that's why there's literally they brought thousands of them, thousands of scientists. These people that were doing all of these crazy testing on human beings and all of this. They brought them to the United States and gave them safe harbor, right? And so what the hunters is they go down and find these Nazi war criminals, and so that's what the show is about.
Okay.
And
Bring
they're
them to justice.
yeah, and so on the flip side, the Nazis that were here, this is part of the story. This is a fictional story, but a lot of it's intertwined with the truth.
Truth.
And they'll do certain things to let you know that this is a real thing inside the documentary. But anyway, the Nazis are trying to develop a second Holocaust, and the way they go about it is insidious and simple. It's so out in the open that people miss it, kind of thing, which is what they're trying to do. So if you watch it and you see the end of it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Just go ahead and tell me, man.
Yeah, I could tell you, but I ain't gonna tell everybody. I don't want to be that guy.
That-
Kev and Lafe spoiling stuff. I don't want to be that guy. I'm trying to be courteous.
People start inboxing you and stuff. I can't
It's like I'm
believe
trying
you
to
did
be quarantine courteous because I know people are looking for stuff to watch.
that. Man, I forgot where I was going to go. Oh,
My bad.
I was gonna say this is a good talk, and that you're giving away. We're talking about the architecture to analysis when it comes to pop culture and how to do the dissecting as far as the thread tracing when it comes
Yep.
to the connectivity of a lot of ideas and things that we're experiencing today. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
when like when I watch movies now or TV shows, now you just take the simple idea and you start tracing that thread, and then that'll help you when it comes to just deciphering belief and uncovering some things. Um, Another
Right.
overarching thing I wanted to get at was the importance of narrative. This is why
Yeah.
belief is important in
We're
narrative
using
shape.
StreamYard, just so you know, StreamYard. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, just the importance of narrative shaping, cultivating your own narrative, because that's going to affect
It's
your life.
storytelling. So I was with the group of creators. We had a meeting earlier this week, to help each other out in terms of giving each other like business pointers, almost like, group business coaching.
A
Yeah, that's it.
mastermind.
Yeah, that's literally what they thought. I was like, yeah, to me, it's just coaching. But
Mhm.
but anyway, so we had like a quick mastermind group, and one of the things that we talked about is the importance of storytelling, and which is what you mean by narrative. Watch the narrative. Pay attention to how stories are told. Um,
Yes.
for example, I keep going back to as like black people were celebrating too early about oh it don't coronavirus don't affect black people blah blah blah. I was like yeah. I was like, let them know that they forgot about you and watch what happens. And now it's like, black people are supposed to be leading the charge in terms of the new infections and all of this
Mm.
kind of stuff. But again, watch narratives, and this ties directly into following the money. The narratives matter because they manipulate the narrative. The storyline is what dictates the manipulation in terms of how money is spent, where money is spent. If I want you to spend money on X as opposed to Y, I'll tell you all the negative things about Y, and then I'll get you to fund X because I'll give you a more compelling story on why X is better. And so you have to pay it again, just pay attention. Just use logical sense. Everybody, for the most part, if you made it to adulthood and you can have a household and you can pay bills, then you have enough sense to realize when somebody's lying to you. So you just want to make sure that you pause and then just ask questions about the questions. Ask questions about the statements. It's like, okay, so if they're saying this, then why is this not working? Or okay, this doesn't make sense.
I
If
think that's the Socratic method.
yeah, it whatever. I don't
That's
know what it is. Scientific method, Hippocratic. I don't know. It just asks questions, right? It's like okay, so I know I have enough logic to understand that if and I'll use COVID for an example. And I'm not saying one thing or another. I'm quarantining, just so you know. This is what I'm doing. It's what my family's doing. But it's like, okay, if you don't know the numbers, then you can't give me numbers. And if you have a population of 360 million roughly now, and only 200,000 tests have been given, then you have a big gap in terms of information. That's an extremely huge gap in terms of information. And so these are things that you have to think about. It's like, okay, so on the one hand, if everybody hasn't been tested and you're saying that things are great, then how can you effectively let everybody go back into the world? But on the other hand, I'm just throwing these out there. On the other hand, scenarios, it's like, okay, if it's so bad, then why isn't the funding being put where the tests are? It's a lot of questions that you need to be asking, and you should be asking these questions, especially in the time of an election year. You have to be asking these questions, and not only ask them, but stand by them. Don't let the president or any politician be dismissive of a question that's pertinent to your livelihood.
if a politician is answering the question on from anywhere, he or
Period.
she is slick and
Period.
good with words. Yeah.
Yeah, and so again, this goes back into vetting narratives and vetting beliefs. It's like, okay, if you believe something, I don't care what side of this whole invisible aisle of a Democrat and a Republican, that only matters to the voting public. It really does, because when you start looking at these boards and you start looking at these funds and you start looking at where all of these people, they're all intermingled. And so again, just pay attention to what's available. This is not something that's top secret. This is not even conspiracy theory. This is little information that's available that lets you know that it's like, oh, they have parties together. Oh, they're at each other's banquets. Oh, they're at this fundraising dinner. Oh, okay, maybe they're not as combative as they want us to believe, but we're combative against each other. We're fighting their wars while they're buddy buddy. And so you have to just be very mindful of that. And again, ask questions. I don't care who the politician is. I don't care what level of politician is. I don't care if it's somebody running for class president, right? Ask them questions that pertains to you. And if they can't answer them effectively, or they're lying because they're saying they're making up stuff, then get rid of them. Period. Because they don't have your best interest in mind as a voter. So I'm not going to vote for somebody that's going to be detrimental to me. So you shouldn't do that either. And again, this has nothing to do with who you like or who you don't like. Plenty of people that you may like will do you wrong.
Yeah.
They can do you wrong. So keep that in mind. And again, this quit getting caught up in the popularity contest, because that's the manipulation. That's the push. There are more than two people to vote for. Way more. 100 million more, as a matter of fact.
Mm.
So again, quit getting caught up in the narratives that they're feeding you, because again, we talk about story. That's why I went on this tangent. Is
Yep.
that story? Pay attention to the storytellers, right? Pay attention to the storytellers. It's like, okay, if I know you're lying, then why am I going to listen to your story no matter how good it is? I know you're already lying, right? And so pay attention to the storytellers, pay attention to the narrative, and make sure that again, just use basic common sense to start asking questions. Just stay curious. Curious George was a monkey, and he
Man,
accomplished a lot of stuff.
he Curious George lived his best life, man. He's
Yeah,
living.
that's what I'm saying, because he stayed curious. So make sure you stay curious, ask questions, like, you know what, this doesn't make any sense at all. It's like, okay, they're giving out a $1,200 stimulus check, but they're dumping trillions into these companies that won't even hire the people back.
Mm.
Hmm. And after the fact that they said they wouldn't do it in the first place. Why are they doing that? Oh, this person stands to make this money because he's with this board. And if you make this a mandatory thing, then they have to go through this company to pay for it. Oh, okay. It starts to make more sense when you start asking those questions. And it's like, okay, why are these people reporting on it? Oh, they're reporting on it because they don't want you to look at the fact that they're making money off of it too. Oh, okay. So again, it's just all of these things. You just ask more and more questions, and then some modicum of the truth. And you won't get all of it because you're not in the right seats, but some
That,
modicum of the truth will start to form.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah, you like you said, you won't get all of it. You'll get some of it, but a lot of it you won't get until 40 years later, and it's on the back page of
Yeah,
some
exactly.
obscure newspaper, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I was
Operation
right.
Paperclip, right? You start
Yeah,
hearing about it. They release the information, the documents, because of
but
some
nobody
quote.
cares then. They moved
Yeah,
on to the next
exactly.
thing.
Everybody's dead and gone, and it's like, oh, it's less pertinent then. So
The Socratic method, it's just one method amongst other tools that you can use when it comes to like deciphering truth. It's just a form of comparative argument dialogue between individuals based on asking and answering questions. So, like you said, ask questions.
that's
Always be asking questions.
it.
Um, keep try to keep your emotions at bay. Keep your ego disciplined and managed and at bay, and that may help us out a lot. And I'm just saying that just because right now I'm thinking about social media and how on fire it can get sometimes when it comes to viewpoints and beliefs. And it's really hard to like have a long form conversation on social media just because it's not really built for that unless you're
Yeah.
doing like live stream or unless two people are willing to go 100 comments deep. Because I'll be reading them. I'll be like,
Yeah, it used to be me, but that was only for arguments back in the day. And I was like, you know what? I'm too old to be going through all of this stuff.
exactly.
I don't argue with nobody no more. It's not even worth it.
This ain't fun no more. Um,
Yeah,
so
but again, yeah, real quick, yeah, it's short form information. So even keep that in mind that these sound bites, going back to the earlier conversation when Eric was talking about, the new millenniums, the younger generation, and all of this, we've created what social media is today in terms of I can't say that we created it because we weren't making commercials. So commercials are the ones that really made with the short burst of information. They would segment TV shows, and so that actually shortened attention spans because of the way information and the way shows were starting to form around uh, uh,
commercials.
commercials, right? So even when you look at the way film works now, it's like cut scenes weren't necessarily a big thing back in the day because you had transitions. Now everything's a cut scene because everything is like boom, here's some information, boom, here's some more information, boom. It just cuts immediately, and you start, firing the synapses and all of this. And so it's really not drawn out and slowed down to where you can take information in and you can focus. A lot
Well,
of this short form information is dedicated to get you to focus on variety of things as opposed to one thing, which makes it more confusing. Go ahead.
which is leading to the, just for one example, the opposite effect is that's leading to the rise of long form consumption, like on YouTube. That's one of the things. I've been I keep up with, like, I listen to a lot of marketing shows and a lot
Oh
of
yeah,
shows talking about
because
trends.
YouTube is paying more now. They're
Yes,
paying more for longer forms of and not just YouTube but advertisers. And
yeah,
so again, now it used to be I don't. And again, these are different trends, different things. Where the shorter the video, the better. Now they want you to make videos that are longer than 4 minutes, so that you can capitalize, so that you can get more viewer watch, those kinds of things. So like you said, now it went from the short commercial, but even with that, they'll embed commercials every 2 minutes or so in those longer forms, and so it is gonna feed back into itself and almost loop back into do the same thing. So
yeah.
it's
The same trend is happening and will happen. These are cycles and
yeah,
patterns and
as
trends
long
that
as they
happen.
still work,
Yeah, and they'll just, yeah, they'll milk it and keep it going as long as possible on that one.
because human
Uh,
psychology is the same. So anyway,
anybody, any other comments or?
no other comments at the
All right.
moment. We definitely appreciate the comments that have happened thus far. Again, we were talking about a variety of things, starting with beliefs, why you believe, and then talking about vetting the information. We talked about environmental factors. We talked about a wide gambit of things relating around belief systems, and even we talked about politics in terms of vetting politicians and vetting the things that they say.
Yep.
So that's a recap.
So that's all I got. Two Shot Guys on the mic. J. Kev, Lafe Taylor here, just talking about, like my man said, beliefs, narratives is important to cultivate and think about what you believe, why you believe it, and that's going to help determine where you're going and how you feel about it. So that's all we got. Hopefully you got something. Definitely
Appreciate it,
appreciate
Sean.
you, Sean, and everybody else that joined in. So that's all I got.
That's it. All right.
Peace out.
We are out. Tune in next week when J Kev gets availability. We'll be back on.